course, there's inner emotional, mental things to believe in. There's outer physical touch, nature. There's other things out, society. There's other things out in the world to believe in. Sometimes they merge, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we go one way, the other way. These are all potentials that Neptune's expanding horizons, opening us up. As we open up, we increase our sensitivities, and we increase our openness. And as we increase our sensitivities, we increase the amount of pain we feel. Well, but as soon as we start saying, I don't want any more pain, I want to close this off, we start closing off our sensitivity and our vision and our scope of things. So solutions to Neptune are not always stop it completely or get out of this completely. It's usually, how do you stay as open as you can, and how can you deal with as much as you can, and how do you rebuild your vision or your self-reliance? How do you make life simple when you've overextended it or got it too complicated? These are Neptune puzzles. So midlife, if I got to here at 42, if I'm stuck, I got the marriage, the kids, I'm not happy, what am I going to do? I'm stuck here forever. This is a midlife crisis. Or if you get there and you haven't got married, you haven't had the kid, everyone else has their life again, you're wondering, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Where do I go from here? Always a mystical path or a celibate path or missing path can be somewhat tied in the beliefs of Neptune. But it doesn't have to be just that. It can be really socially, it can be as corrupted as it is religious or spiritual. You can be aspiring or it can be corrupting. Either way, say you get a bad habit, you start drinking or you start doing drugs and you want other people to get drugs and you have to buy it to maintain a habit, you're going to attract more and more people and you're the corrupting influence. That's still a Neptune factor. And you believe that you're caught in it. So addictions, heavy addictions, coffee, sugar, any addictions, that's Neptune. So Neptune, it's kind of a higher octave of Jupiter. Jupiter can expand things, but Neptune can really do it. So like, Neptune won't make things more clear. It'll make it more puzzling, more confusing, more disoriented. And it's a test. Can you navigate through that or not? When a fog comes in, you can't keep speeding. You got to slow down a little bit. Even if you've got a deadline, you have to put and wait for the fog to lift. Or there could be more severe repercussions. So with Neptune, you have to puzzle whether it's being projected as a fanatical thing where you're believing everything and nobody else's belief is real, and you can't see where you are, in which case you're projecting out beyond control, and that may be rapturous, that may take you out to God or whatever, but the repercussions of that will crash or dissolve and before you come back to humble simplicity. Or Neptune can just lose, confuse, get lost, get alone, until you come back to you're all alone, and you have to find out what's the standard. Where do I believe in myself? What am I doing? What's simple? How to be content with simple things. But so many puzzles come up. This is Neptune, this planet of puzzles, of confusion, of mysteries, of sorrows and guilts and dependencies. I'd like to think of Neptune as love and romance and expectations, and then the repercussions of those, the disorientations that come from those. So, okay, we'll take, so the Neptune to Neptune we did, but that was just basically, that's my Neptune. When you put these into human experiences, where are we here? Yeah, so with Neptune to Neptune, it's our nude visions and dreams, the conjunction. Some of us are to buy something special, to take a special trip, to go someplace, to have an adventure. It's there, but having that sets the theme in motion from the conjunction. We're born. How much our parents believe in us, how much we believe in ourselves, how much affirmation, how much confusion we get, what kind of world our soul has attracted. That's right there at the beginning. Neptune, it starts from there. And those adventures build up till 42. We get our midlife faith adjustment. It builds up to our social world and our social adventures, for better or worse, dependent, codependent, whatever, till we get to 82, where we have awareness of faith or adventures and simplicity. We have to at 82, you got to simplify your life. You can't keep carrying everything you have been. Well, but it can be a transition to a greater faith and a greater belief too. I always remember Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian emperor. He was the sun and moon in Leo, I think. His sun was, so he called himself the King of Kings. I'm Haile Selassie, the King of Kings, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He believed he was the holy patron. He was the lion. Everywhere he went, he brought his lions with him on a boat. He would travel with them, and he believed he was the leader that was going to make blacks more acceptable or bring that up in the world. And he lived very dramatically. The first half, he became the emperor, the king. He lived very socially. And in the end of his life, he lived to exact Neptune opposed Neptune. And at the end of his life, he got somebody broke in and into his place, and they kidnapped him. They grabbed him, kidnapped him, killed him, and buried him in an unmarked grave, and that was the end of him. It's like this whole dramatic thing. At the end, there was no tombstones. There was nothing. There's nothing. It was dissolved. Not that everyone hitting that Neptune is going to. His is just a dramatic example. But Neptune to Neptune is just a simple, normal thing we all go through. For me, my Neptune, I don't have now. If you have Neptune in your natal chart and it's conjunct or square or opposing planets, you're going to have things pile up with the Neptune. It's not just the Neptune to Neptune, it's really Neptune hitting the other planets, but I got to be more extreme with it. But for my beginning, I had an allergy to, I had my mother's milk, and when they tried to get me off, I wouldn't, which was about March, April. She tried to get off breastfeeding. She couldn't really because they couldn't find a formula. It took them 6 months, not till about September. Well, maybe a bit before September, but they had to find a soya-based thing. But I had to go through about 12 or 13 formulas, trying it, getting sick, not working. So Neptune was like affected, and I was small to begin with, so it was affecting my health when I was first born. And the confusion of my parents not knowing what to do or whatever. So that's just it. At the square at 42, it was the end of my second marriage, and it hit 5 times between 87 and 89. And in that end of the second marriage ended, I was on my own, but there were different lumps and bumps within this, sorrows within this, and starting a new relationship. And at the end of it, I began my marriage number 3. Well, they were all Neptune to Neptune. It was all part of, it was really, at a certain age, I didn't want to be along in marriage, and it didn't work. I didn't want to be there. Someone else came, I believed them, and this was a change. That was just Neptune to Neptune. Not an extreme aspect, something just of an age factor. And my third marriage was to a much younger person, or well, 12 years younger. And I was half living, I was feeling young by being with her. So not something I could fight, it was just something that was happening. So when you get yours down, you'll see it'll start to formulate a story for you. You're not going to have specific. You'll see this general phases. Here was a difficult pushing for a romance, like starting with a certain point, someone believing in someone, believing I belong, believing I can have a relationship, and 2 of my marriage were tied up within this phase. It was a square. Even the third marriage didn't last that long. Well, you could say they all lasted just as long as they were meant to, but didn't last as long as I dreamed or believed they would. But they brought the gullibility in with it. So it's simple. The pattern is simple. If we go to, I guess we'll do the sun. We'll look at the sun next. Where are we here? Okay, so when Neptune hits the sun, it's only going to make 2 aspects in a lifetime, maybe 1, maybe 2 aspects to your sun in your lifetime. It's going to conjunct, square, or opposed. It's unlikely that it's going to do conjunction. If you get into your 80s, then you can get into a third one. But usually you're going to get 1 or 2 hits of Neptune to your sun in your life. That's tests of faith. Your sun is your confidence, your will to live, your will to move into the future, your confidence. And Neptune is going to enhance that. It's going to make you believe in that in a huge degree. I got to go on this. It's going to bring in the great dreams and great visions to go for it. At the same time, it can make you very gullible. At the same time, bring in confusions around it, distortions around it, expectations about it, dependencies. I should have done it. Great guilt and sorrows that affect your confidence. So your confidence can be pumped up way too high, and then you can be humbled. Easy to get humbled, but confusing to try and reorient after you've been humbled. And so, let's take this one. For me, Neptune is in Libra, and my sun is in Libra, so it caught up to my son when I was only 6 or 7 years old. So this was, my dad went bankrupt. We had to move out of one place to another place, had to start a new school, be in middle of grade 1. But in this new school, it was conjunct my son, so it was a big change. My family had split up before that. They were just getting back together. It was all confusion around me. But in this new school, I didn't get along with everybody. It was a bit more disoriented. But in grade 1, I have a gym teacher who was from Russia. It was really great, and he liked my potential. He thought I was so good and I was fearless, so he put me on the grade 11 gym team. And for a year or two, I toured all over Quebec with this grade 11 gym team, and I'm this little mascot they brought on. They would toss around and flip around. I had the chance to believe that I could do something incredible. My parents weren't really into it, but it was something incredible. And like, if I'd had support those days, who knows if I'd gone into Olympics or something later on. Didn't it? It wasn't meant to happen, but it still was an affirmation I could do things. I put up with so much abuse at home that to be in a place where you're being encouraged to try this, do this, you're being helped to do things, wow, that was really affirmation. So that was a great belief. That was the Neptune on my son. So from there, I got a lot of confidence in school. Didn't mean everything was perfect, but it really was an affirmation of me to me. And that's not about girls or anything like that, too young. The square, when Neptune came and square my son, this is 42 years later, comes along. I had a star center, which was a library and astrology center, and then I expanded it. I was elected to steering committee in charge of the American Association for Astrological Networking, really American organization that was started, and I was president of NCGR Toronto. And all those things were the positive wave of things. I was really out there, extended out and much, but I wasn't too high profile. But there were people around me that were jealous or envious and weren't so reliable. And I got overextended, it got complicated. And by the end of this, but during this, at the same time, even though I had been teaching myself for 20 some odd years then, I never had a certification. So I went and I took the testing for Professional Astrologers Inc. and I got certified member, and then I got my school certified. During this whole period of time, I felt I had to do this. I should do this since I'm in this position in charge of AFAN and NCGR, and I was responsible for that. I thought I should have some structure in it, so I took that. So the roles never stayed. The AFAN was a 4-year run, and the NCGR it complicated, and they weren't really supportive of things out of the country, so it broke up. And then, but at the same process, I tried to go that far, but I was overextended. That was Neptune to my son. It affected it built up my confidence hugely. To other people, probably arrogantly, and then I got humbled out of it. So at the same time, my third marriage had ended just before this. So I was on my own, and my energy was going out instead of to a relationship. It was going out to social things and things. It was magnifying the Neptune to my son. So you see the things, then you got to see. But I was sad, even though I was accompanying my personal life was. In a certain way, I was kind of sad in myself. So there's always a puzzle where Neptune is. In the end, all these groups I was involved in, they all one by one fell away. And even the Professional Astrologers Inc., I was the last person to get certified by it. And a year or so later, they just dissolved because computers were coming in and their standards were no longer valid for computer world. They are, but they changed. They were so much involved with calculations and having to be able to do the calculations. But all of these things I was involved in meant huge things to me. They came and went. Doesn't mean anything to anybody else. It's just something that happened. That's the Neptune factor of it. Okay, it opened up visions of potential, but then I got burnt too from it, and then I had an aversion to doing this. In